The Cursed Funeral No. 1 attended 9 spine-chilling true stories of haunted waits in the ranch. Sarah stood in the middle of the dilapidated ranch, the weight of impending doom heavy in the air. It was to be her husband's funeral, but the silence wrapped around her like a suffocating shroud. The barn, once filled with laughter, now felt like a coffin waiting to be sealed. The church, usually aglow with sympathy, sat dark and deserted, as if the community whispered secrets instead of condolences. Shadows flickered just beyond the window, each creak of the old wood echoing in her heart, and the hairs on the back of her neck prickled with dread. Even the wind seemed to carry the echoes of something sinister. Whispers brushed against her ears, calling her husband's name, taunting her grief. She remembered the stories shared over campfires of the Watcher, a spirit lurking within the shadows, seeking to claim those who strayed too close. Was it true? Was this place cursed? The creeping unease made her stomach churn as the days passed in agonizing loneliness. Reaching out to neighbors for help was met with cold shoulders and averted gazes. As she stood by the barn, a strange light flickered deep in the woods, pulsating like a heartbeat. The townsfolk had poured their lives into rituals performed at dusk, but they closed off to her, as if an unspoken pact of silence held tighter than her sorrow. The local sheriff dismissed her fears, shaking his head dismissively. "Grief," he said. Grief was a heavy fog, but there was something more lurking beneath that surface. Just as she tried to find comfort in her 2 children, a chill swept through the old ranch house. They huddled around a flickering fire, sharing ghost stories, trying to find warmth in the chill that gripped their hearts. But the rustling outside echoed like a threat, a reminder that they were not alone. The house seemed to hold its breath, and so did she. The wind howled through the cracks, carrying cries of lost souls and reverberating her dread deep into her bones. Determined to understand, Sarah grabbed her children's hands, leading them towards the forest, driven by the spectral glow that seemed to beckon them. With each step deeper into the woods, the air thickened, and the chills sank into her bones. They stumbled upon an abandoned burial ground, tangled in gnarled roots, as if the very earth was trying to pull her in. Fear was heavy, dancing around them, whispering the secrets of generations past that should have remained buried. Then the ground trembled, dark shadows curled around them, and she felt her heart stop. One child was pulled away, dragged into the consuming darkness. A piercing scream tore through her lips. Was this reality or a twisted nightmare? The funeral loomed, a sinister invitation lingering like a curse. Would it be a sacrifice? The truth surged through her like wildfire. Everything she had ever known was about to unravel in front of her as she stood at the edge of the abyss, confronted by the terrifying choice of saving her child or facing the demon that whispered in her husband's name. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the last flicker of daylight slipped away, a sense of finality descended upon her. Shadows lunged toward them, and Sarah was left grappling with her very existence. The ground beneath her shook with terrible fury, and the whispers of the past grew louder, forming a cacophony of threats. What had been a gathering of remembrance now felt like a prelude to nightmare, with the sinister reality of the Watcher closing in. Time was slipping through her fingers, and a chilling sense of dread warned that salvation would come at a price her family might never be able to pay. The darkness swallowed them whole, wrapping around Sarah and her remaining child like a suffocating blanket. "Mom!" Her other child's voice pierced the silence, filled with fear and desperation. The shadows twisted and writhed, forming shapes that seemed to lunge at them. Sarah's heart raced, each beat echoing in her ears like a war drum, pushing her forward. What had just happened? Where was her child? The forest felt alive, and its cold breath brushed against her face as if warning her to turn back. "Stay close," she shouted, gripping her daughter's hand tightly, as they stumbled through the treacherous roots and underbrush. The pulsating light flickered further ahead, a beacon amidst the engulfing terror. But as they ran, the darkness around them whispered, twisting the names of those they had lost: her husband, her first child. It was all too much. Sarah's mind spiraled, the weight of grief and palpable dread almost bringing her to her knees. With each step toward the eerie glow, she felt the darkness hungry for more. The night sky above seemed to thicken, the weight of the stars pressing down like the eyes of unseen observers. "Mom, please. I'm scared." Her daughter whimpered, looking up at her with wide, terrified eyes. "I know, sweetie. Just keep moving. We need to find your brother." Sarah's voice came out steadier than she felt truthfully. But with each inch they moved deeper into the woods, the pull of the shadows clawed at her sanity. Then, the whispers turned into a chorus. Sarah twisted her head, trying to make sense of them, but they blended into a terrifying chant. Words echoed from nowhere, looming questions that pricked her consciousness like splinters. Would they take her too? Would her family be sacrificed to this restless nightmare? Driven by instinct, she urged her daughter onward, but the forest seemed to shift. Trees twisted, leaving paths distorted. Panic surged through Sarah. They were trapped, ensnared in some ancient game of despair where the rules were written in malice. As they stumbled through the foliage, a snapping branch echoed behind them, sending adrenaline through her veins. She turned, catching just a glimpse of a dark figure, its eyes gleaming with a sinister hunger. "Run!" she screamed, fear forcing her legs to move faster. They dashed away, branches scraping at their skin, but the underbrush seemed hungry, pulling at their clothes, attempting to hold them back. With every frantic breath, Sarah felt terror shredding her heart, but the foul whispers followed closely, taunting her, reminding her of her husband's last moments. The desperation to save her children threatened to consume her. The earth itself seemed to conspire against them, roots reaching for her feet as if urging her to stay. "We need to reach the light," she urged through grit teeth, eyes straining to see through the darkness. The glow became brighter, a stark contrast against the pitch-black realm surrounding them. Yet as they advanced, a pivotal choice loomed on the horizon. A clearing appeared, wrapped in mist, illuminated by that spectral light. But within that being, shadows danced, revealing grotesque figures engulfed in an ethereal half-life. "Mom, where are we?" her daughter asked, voice trembling. "I don't know." The doubt seeped through her resolve, inching into every crevice of her mind. What if this was a trap? A figure emerged from the shadows, its form indistinguishable, yet the familiar aura twisted Sarah's gut. Her husband's laughter echoed within her, warped and dissonant. Was he alive? Could he help them? Or was this another cruel manipulation by the Watcher? Just then, the light pulsated violently, and the ground beneath them cracked, crevices widening as if the very earth were about to swallow them whole. "Run!" she screamed again, but the choices before her tangled like thorns. She could feel time slipping away, and the choice hung heavy: save her remaining child or reach out for the shadows that promised something more. But which child would be worth saving in the end? As the earth trembled, a chilling silence settled in. What if the true horror lay in the price of the choice she had yet to make? Would they ever find peace, or would they become another echo in the haunting tales of the ranch? The ground trembled beneath their feet, each tremor echoing like a cruel heartbeat, as Sarah grappled with the dread of her choice. Instinct screamed within her, protect her daughter. But the shadows beckoned, twisting into grotesque mimicries of family, memories beckoning like siren calls from the deep. "Mom!" her daughter's voice quavered, panic increasing with each falter of Sarah's resolve. "What's happening? Just hold on." Panic nearly choked her words, but she pushed forward, torn between hope and despair. Suddenly, the ethereal glow shifted, revealing more grotesque figures twisting in the vapor. They twisted and flailed, merging with the darkness. Old faces. Familiar faces. Each one reminded her of the life she couldn't save. They moaned of loss, and their cries burrowed into Sarah's mind, pulling her heart down with them. "Mom!" her daughter tugged, pulling her backward, as though she was slipping into a nightmare from which she might not return. Please don't listen. But how could she not listen? Each whisper was an echo of her husband's laughter, her son's soft giggles. They were lost, and she was still here, breathing while shadows mocked her existence. A primal instinct pushed her forward, but her legs felt like roots suffocated beneath the earth. The clearing loomed closer, the flickering light morphing into something almost sentient, like a beast watching them, hungry for their fear. Sarah, a familiar voice drifted through the mist, low and haunting. Her husband's name escaped like a haunting echo from a grave, crawling through the fog to caress her ear. Help me know. She shouted, clamping her hands over her ears, trying to drown his voice in the shadows around her. I want to listen. Mom. The urgent cry of her daughter, her small body trembling beside her. The child had seen the transformation, she could feel the impending dread. In the vividness of the spectral haze, Sarah saw them faces indistinguishable from the light, moving closer, yet farther at the same time. Her husband. Her son. Both looked melodious as if reaching for her. But shadows curled around them like fingers, pulling them down into darkness, leaving their eyes pleading. Sarah's heart raced, blood pounding in her ears as she wrestled with the gnawing question, who would she choose? What would it cost? Mom. The child cried again, pulling her further away. Don't go. Please. Time warped in the ethereal glow, and she felt moments stretching, collapsing into terrifying breaths. With every heartbeat, the trees swayed, whispering sinister warnings, daring her to step closer. Suddenly, the pulse of light surged again, sending waves of burning cold rippling through her. She staggered, feeling the ground slip beneath her as branches tugged at her feet. The figures in the glow began to distort, revealing swirling memories, moments frozen in eternal sorrow. What was real? Was it her husband who beckoned, or was it something darker, manipulating her fragile mind? Stay with me. I want to let go. But her fingers gripped only air as her daughter wept, fear bubbling to the surface. Then came a warping snap. A sound mixed with a guttural growl nearby, a shadow leaping between trees, predatory eyes glimmering as they sought her out. The beast was hunting them now. Sarah's fear turned visceral as the darkness thickened, swallowing everything familiar. She knew time was running out, the choice burning like wildfire in her heart. With an agonizing scream, she broke free of the hold, darting toward the light that flickered brighter, stretching a hand toward her daughter. Yet in that moment, she sensed something fundamental shatter within her, the very essence of sacrifice itself. Behind her, laughter erupted like thunder, echoing through the oppressive silence. Sarah! That treacherous voice called out again, mixing with others, offering false comfort within the shadows. As she ran, pulling her daughter along, Sarah realized with horror, darkness was not all that hunted them. It lived within her. But what awaited them when they reached the light? Would it deliver salvation or plunge them deeper into the abyss? The answer felt just out of reach, hovering in the mist, taunting her as she ran blindly into the unknown. They burst into the clearing, gulping the fog-laden air, but the relentless shadows pursued them, crawling through the underbrush, eager to reclaim their prey. The faint glow grew sharper, brighter, like a lighthouse in an unforgiving storm. Mom, please. We can't stop. Her daughter's voice fractured with urgency. Sarah felt the weight of the girl's small hand in hers, her grip tightening as though anchoring them both to sanity, but darker memories haunted Sarah's thoughts. Images flashed in and out of focus, birthday parties, family vacations, their home adorned with laughter. Those shining moments stung like nettles in her mind, wrapped in the fog and shadows. They transformed before her, twisting into grotesque caricatures that echoed with hollow laughter, promising reunion, yet exuding despair. Run! She gasped, fear gripping her throat. The laughter grew louder, morphing into howls as the shadowy figures behind them clawed at the edges of light. She turned her head just for a moment, her heart sinking further. The faces were there. Smiling, beckoning, but beneath those smiles lurked something hungry, something primal that thirsted for their terror. "Mom!" Her daughter whimpered again, pulling her closer, dragging her back into the moment, back into the reality of their flight from unknown terrors. "Hold on to me, sweetie." As they sprinted toward the light, every ounce of Sarah's being screamed that they had to escape. But the darkness surged, emboldened by their fear, seeping into the very air they breathed. With one last surge of desperation, Sarah flung herself forward, crashing into the luminosity, pulling her daughter tightly to her chest. Then came a blinding flash. A searing white brightness burst forth, consuming her vision and engulfing her senses. For a heartbeat, there was nothing but light, a lifeline, a reprieve from the dread. She felt warmth wrapping around them like comforting arms, but just as quickly as it had come, the light flickered. "Mom!" A whispering uncertainty from her daughter, slicing through the fragility of the moment. The brightness waned, revealing a viscous landscape, unfamiliar and twisted. They stood on a patch of ground, dry and cracked, the sky overhead a swirling tempest of gray. Dread engulfed them anew, as shadows spiraled into a chaotic dance, forming shapes too sharp, too angular, too alive. In the distance lay what seemed a funeral, an open casket surrounded by roiling fog, a scene that beckoned with vicious familiarity. The sight churned Sarah's stomach. She struggled to breathe, caught between the urge to flee and an insatiable pull towards the casket. "Mom!" The tension in her daughter's voice quaked like saplings in a storm. "What is that?" "I don't know." Fear laced her words. The air thrummed with energy, suffocating her resolve. Memories whispered too loudly now, greedy for her attention. A funeral she never knew, faces gathered in mourning, a sweet laughter drowned out by tears. "Why don't we just go down that path?" The child pointed toward half-hidden brambles leading away from the macabre scene, her innocence shattering the suffocating haze of loss. But even that sense of safety felt false. A part of Sarah was drawn back toward the casket, a primal urge igniting something perilous within her. What lay inside? Desecration? Or perhaps the answer to their misery? As they hesitated, the shadows suddenly stilled, transforming into an ominous silence that rippled through the clearing. An unseen presence loomed, a feeling of being watched, waiting for them to make their fatal choice. "Mom!" her daughter begged. "We have to go. Now." Sarah felt time stretch painfully, awareness suspended on a threadbare whisper. But behind her, the laughter rose once more, loud, joyous, mocking. Their voices echoed, familiar but distorted, impossible and undeniable, the weight of the choice coiled around her heart like a noose. The casket glimmered, a forbidden treasure in a world of nightmares. Could they escape it? As her daughter trembled by her side, a haunting whisper curled through the air. "Join us." With time slipping away, the question hung heavy: should they confront the darkness, or turn back into an unknown fate that waited beyond? Sarah's breath hitched, eyes darting between the encroaching shadows and the casket's sinister promise. "Mom!" Trembling, her daughter stood her ground. Would the hold of darkness claim them? Desperation clawed at Sarah. She had to decide quickly. But what if the horror wasn't just out there? What if it came from within, lurking, waiting for its moment? It was just a matter of time. "Mom!" The urgency in her daughter's voice sliced through the air once more, rising above the oppressive silence surrounding them. Panic surged within Sarah, each heartbeat thrumming thunderously in her ears. She clenched her daughter's hand tighter, the warmth of the child reminding her that they were alive, but the shadows whispered promises of what they could become. "Let us go!" Sarah yelled, though the words felt hollow against the tableau of decay before them. Every fiber of her being screamed to flee, yet a sickening curiosity rooted her to the spot. What lay within that casket? The air thickened with a palpable dread, and the grotesque figures in the shadows seemed to shift closer, their silhouettes merging with the fog. Despair flickered in her daughter's eyes, a reflection of her own inward turmoil. "Mom!" her daughter's voice trembled, lips quivering. "What if they're trying to help?" The thought made Sarah's stomach roll. Help? Or a trap? She remembered vaguely the tales her own mother told her as a child, tales about spirits who lingered at the edges of eternity, waiting to pull the living into their world of endless night. The shadows danced and coiled around them like serpents, teasing at her sanity. No, she gasped, as if the act of denial could shake off the weight of inevitability. They're not helping. They're hungry. As if on cue, a grin spread across the horizon of shadows, mocking her. The laughter swelled again, full of mirth and malice, worming its way into her mind, plucking at the strings of fear. Mom! We have to move. Her daughter pulled harder, but Sarah found herself transfixed, drawn closer to the casket, as if it had a magnetism she could not resist. Each step felt like an unimaginable betrayal of their flight from the darkness. The rustling of brambles behind them snapped her back to reality. Were they truly alone? Her heart raced as she glanced over her shoulder. The path they had been running along seemed to dissolve into the fog, leaving only uncertainty in its wake. Change was inevitable here, every choice was heavy with consequence. Stay close to me. She breathed harshly, taking a hesitant step toward the casket. The laughter morphed into shrieks, a cacophony of enraged wails clawing at her sanity. Instinct screamed at her to turn around and run, but something deeper compelled her forward, the need to understand the darkness that shrouded them. Mom! No! The child's protest grounded her for just an instant, but the casket opened ever so slightly, pulsing with a dreadful glow. Don't look at it, she warned as she could feel the pull of the void pressing against her, squeezing the breath from her lungs. Before she could find strength to turn away, it happened. A shadow lunged from the periphery, like a jagged claw reaching for them. Sarah grasped her daughter tighter, yanking at the girl's arm as a bone-chilling scream echoed from the depths of the casket. The force was sudden and primal, causing Sarah to stumble. The laughter grew louder, reverberating in her very core. They were not alone, something had crossed the threshold, something that craved what they had: life, hope, a future. Run! Sarah shouted, adrenaline fueling each frantic step as she dragged her daughter, but the shadows coiled tighter. It was an impossible barrier of teeming darkness. They would not let them pass. Mom! Her daughter's scream cut deep, and Sarah's heart shattered as she felt the world spiral away. Hold on! With all the strength she could muster, she turned, their eyes meeting in a moment suspended in time, a moment when everything could change. The figure erupted from the casket, wreathed in shadow, pulling at the edges of reality, its voice a searing whisper, "Join us." The cold darkness seeped deeper, and Sarah's resolve wavered. To fight or to surrender? And in that flicker of hesitation, the laughter crescendoed once more. What awaited them at the edge of this night? A choice forged by desperation at the cusp of ruin? The casket beckoned with open arms, but the shadows clawed, demanding a price. Would they pay it? They had to decide quickly. Time slipped like sand through their fingers, and the darkness was hungry. The world collapsed into chaos as shadows swept forward, clutching at Sarah and her daughter. The air trembled with the dark figure's presence, its whispers melting into an echo of despair. "Join us, Mom!" Her daughter cried, her voice breaking, each syllable laced with the weight of panic. With a surge of urgency, Sarah pulled her daughter closer, using the lost instinct of a fierce protector. The shadows shifted, their forms becoming more defined. Faces of the lost flickered in and out of existence, mouth agape, jaw slackened, a grotesque tableau of yearning and rage. It was like stepping into the heart of a nightmare, where reality blurred and danger danced with malevolence. No! She screamed, feeling her heart threaten to jump from her chest. The shadows wanted to suck them in, dragging them into the casket's gaping maw. There was no escape. New shapes writhed within the darkness, slithering towards them, hungry for flesh and hope. With trembling hands, Sarah yanked her daughter behind her. "We need to go. Now." The words burned through the fog of fear, igniting something primal inside her. She felt the air shift around them, the heavy weight of the dark pressing hard against her back, urging her to submit. Dread clawed at Sarah's mind, whispering tales of those who had vanished, swallowed whole by the casket's seductive glow. "Don't look. She shouted, but the words echoed desperately in the thickening air. Suddenly, a gust of wind burst forth, swirling leaves and debris, obscuring the horror within the casket. Sarah's instincts kicked in, pulling her away from the grasp of the shadows. She turned on her heel, yanking her daughter along, but the ground beneath them shifted, making them stumble. "Mom!" The child's voice was small, lost in a sea of chaos. "Keep running," Sarah replied, her own voice firm against the maelstrom. They burst through the trees, branches clawing at their arms, but the shadows were relentless. Behind them, the cacophony of laughter twisted into a growing roar, a haunting symphony of despair. The forest began to warp, as if it were alive. Shadows stretched out, entwined in spirals that aimed to pull them back. Sarah ducked, grabbing her daughter just as a jagged figure lunged from the blackness, its fingers threatening to wrap around the child. "Hold on to me," she reaffirmed, squeezing her daughter with a fierce grasp. But fear consumed her, whispering doubts in her ear. What if it was too late? They reached a clearing, an eerie frozen expanse lit by a ghostly moon, illuminating the edges of their world. The shadows pulled back slightly, yet they were an ever-present storm, swirling at the tear of the daylight. Sarah's gaze flicked to the casket, yearning to understand what it demanded. She could feel the power of choice slip between her fingers. "Where do we go?" The child's voice quivered, eyes wide with fear, desperately seeking assurance in her mother's stricken face. "We'll get away from it, I promise." But doubt gnawed at Sarah's core. A low rumble vibrated through the air, a forewarning of the darkness that loomed. The shadows muttered words she couldn't understand but felt in her bones a call to surrender. They stepped into the moonlight, only to find figures rising from the ground, shape-shifting specters that echoed their fear, beckoning them to return, to yield. "Mom!" A piercing scream shattered the night as her daughter stumbled backward. Time hung suspended, dread coiling around Sarah's throat. She rushed to catch her before the darkness could pull her under, but a shadow shot forward, its icy fingers closing around the girl's ankle. The weight of inevitability crashed over them. "Let go of her!" Sarah screamed, raw desperation surging through her. She could feel the casket's pull, its intoxicating allure beckoning them both. But at what cost? "Join us," the whispers echoed around them, taunting. As Sarah ready to fight, the shadows transformed once more, revealing faces she recognized, lost souls calling her name. A choice dawned upon her, one that would change everything. Would she sacrifice everything to save her daughter? Or was it time to confront the darkness that craved their essence? The moment hung suspended, heavy with dread, as the shadows stirred restlessly. "Let go of her." The words tore through Sarah like a sharp blade. Adrenaline surged, illuminating the dark corners of her frightened mind. She reached for her daughter, desperate, almost blinded by the dark urge pulling at them. The shadow's grip tightened, nails like ice puncturing the flesh of the child's ankle. The girl's eyes widened in terror, shimmering reflections of the approaching nightmare. "Mom! I can't." She struggled, confusion and fear mingling like a thick fog around them. "Fight! You have to fight!" Sarah bellowed, her voice breaking as a surge of insecurity rippled through her. Around them, the laughter of the shadows grew, a chilling symphony of taunts dragging them deeper into despair. They were a horrible chorus of familiar voices, all echoing grievances from the abyss. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest. She could feel the ground tremble beneath them, alive with the restless energy of the casket. Each beat sang a foreboding melody, urging her to give in. Just surrender. No. She couldn't let them win. Not now. She lunged forward, fingers reaching for her daughter. The ghostly faces, carved in anguish and despair, lingered closer, taunting her with memories she had buried deep. Faces from her past, moments from a life she thought long gone. "You should join us, Sarah. We've missed you," they hissed, their voices merging into a cacophony of lies and longing. With a primal scream, she yanked her daughter free, pulling them both into a desperate frenzy of movement. They spun away from the shadows, the blazing moonlight at their backs now dimmed by an encroaching wall of darkness. "Run!" Sarah shouted, her voice raw yet resolute. Each step felt heavy on the ground, terror clinging to their heels. She couldn't afford to look back, not even to see who or what was chasing them. A sick horror twisted in her stomach. What if it was someone she once loved? A familiar face now twisted in anguish. The thought was repulsive. Suddenly, the trees around them creaked, groaning as if nature herself was possessed. The forest transformed into a maze, limbs reaching like skeletal arms, desperate to ensnare them. She could feel the air thicken, the shadows bending and twisting around them like a constrictor snake. Sarah's breath came in ragged gasps. They were losing ground. The laughter crescendoed, filling the space with raw malice. If she didn't find a way out, they'd be swallowed whole. Where? She screamed, the desperation clawing at her throat. Where do we go? The child clung to her side, eyes wide with fear, frantically scanning the dark. Then, a flicker light ahead. A narrow path flanked by ancient stones, strangely illuminated. That way. Sarah pointed, feeling a surge of hope, but even as they ran toward it, dread clung to her. What if this path led them straight back into the casket? For a moment, her steps faltered. A low growl escaped the shadows, rumbling like the echoes of a forgotten curse. The path twisted as if alive, serpentine, leading them deeper into the belly of darkness. Sarah shivered, fear wrapping around her heart like a vice. She could feel the shadow's breath at her back, whispering promises she could hardly comprehend. Just when they seemed to gain ground, the shadows reached out, fingertips grazing their skin like icy tendrils of torment. The world shrank as their surroundings closed in, the laughter now a deafening roar, drowning out her thoughts. "Mom, please." The pleading in her daughter's voice pushed Sarah forward, into the unknown. Faster, they sprinted toward the glow. It became a beacon amidst the black, never overpowering but beckoning just the same. But with every step they took, Sarah felt the shadows clawing at her resolve, eager to pull her under, eager to join them in their eternal suffering. Would they be able to escape, or was the curse of the casket already sealed around them? As they approached the light, a terrible howl erupted, echoing off the trunks of the trees. Panic surged anew in Sarah's veins as darkness threatened to engulf them. What lay ahead in that light? Was it a sanctuary? Or another trap waiting to ensnare them? Only silence answered her, nestled deep within the forest's chilling embrace, ready for the next wave of horror to unfold. The light flickered wildly, casting erratic shadows that danced around them, growing longer and reaching for the depths of the forest. Sarah's pulse quickened, a pounding drum in her ears as the howl faded into a haunting silence, leaving only the whispers of the past swirling around. "Mom, please." The child's voice was a fragile thread, snapping at the edges of her composure. Sarah forced herself to look ahead, knowing deep down that they had to move forward. The swarming darkness seemed to hesitate, as if uncertain about what lay ahead of its grasp. There was something about the light, it felt almost sentient, pulling them in, promising safety just beyond the veil of terror. But every instinct screamed at her to turn back. Was it a mirage? A cruel trick played by the shadows? They were always one step behind, always lurking, and she could feel their cold anticipation, not just to capture them, but to revel in their fear. "Keep going," Sarah urged, gripping her daughter's hand tightly, feeling the warmth of her skin. A sudden flash of guilt cut through her. Was she dragging her child into a trap? A rush of memories flooded her mind, nights watching over her, holding her tight against her nightmares. Could she really be the protector when the darkness was so relentless? "Mom!" The child cried again, and Sarah steeled herself as she ducked under low branches, the path narrowing before them. Brambles clutched at her clothes, tearing at her sleeves, like the hands of the damned reaching out in desperation. She glanced back just once, and what she saw haunted her, shadows writhing and merging, forming grotesque shapes. She recognized forms of faces she refused to associate with any reality. "Keep running." Sarah shouted, the words a litany, a desperate prayer. Close to their heels, the growls morphed into guttural laughter, low and sinister, the taunt sending chills down her spine. Every step forward felt like stepping deeper into the belly of despair. Then a sudden rush, a surge of hope. The light illuminated the path just ahead, revealing tall monoliths carved with faint silhouettes of anguished faces. Each stone seemed alive, telling a story of sorrow yet to unfold. The air thrummed with energy, making the hair on her arms stand on end. Mom! What's that? Sarah's heart dropped. Just off the side of the path, an ancient mausoleum loomed, its entrance yawning wide and dark. It seemed to invite them closer. She hesitated, caught between the grip of dark fear and a sick curiosity. What lay inside? Was it a place of refuge or a tomb of horrors? The decision hung heavy in the air, a thick miasma of dread. But the shadows pressed closer, greedily inhaling her hesitation. Was there a choice? There! She exclaimed, pointing to the mausoleum. The thundering laughter roared back, drowning out her thoughts, like a mob feasting on chaos. She raced toward it, her daughter's feet just a whisper behind. The moment they crossed the threshold, the temperature plummeted. A void of silence swallowed them whole. For the first time, they were shielded from the shadows outside. But the eerie stillness was deceptive. As Sarah turned to catch her breath, the overwhelming pressure of the darkness outside transformed into an internal suffocation that a flickering lantern swung from the stone ceiling above, dimly illuminating the trembling walls. Shadows whispered at the edges of the light. But worse was what surrounded them. Old, decrepit coffins lined the walls, names etched in them fading away like forgotten souls. Mom! Her daughter's voice quivered. Are we safe? Sarah's heart sank. The shadows inched closer, teasing the edge of the lantern's glow. The air thickened, filled with a presence that felt all too familiar. Memories of funerals, losses, and shadows that crept in during the night rushed back. No. She whispered, understanding dawning like the cold chill of death. This is where they want us. But before she could pull her daughter back toward the entrance, the ground began to tremble. The coffins shook, a horrific symphony of wood scraping against stone, and then, a horrific clawing sound resonated from deep within the mausoleum. There was no escape. The grip of the shadows tightened around them, ready to consume. Just when hope flickered out, a deafening crash echoed through the crypt. Something was breaking free. What had they awakened? The question lingered urgently as tendrils of blackness coiled tighter. Their fate was now bound forever beneath the looming threat of the coffin's unveil. The ground quaked beneath them, an ominous reminder that the mausoleum was not a sanctuary, but a cage. Sarah squeezed her daughter's hand tighter, her heart racing, adrenaline coursing through her veins. The shadowy corners of the crypt seemed to pulse with a sinister life of their own, absorbing every flicker of light from the lantern above. Mom, I'm scared. The child's voice wavered, the tremor shaking Sarah to her core. Stay close. She urged, the words barely escaping her lips. Her mind raced, plotting escape routes. But where was there to run? The entrance was swallowed by the encroaching dark, each inch filled with the mockery of what lay in wait. Then the sound intensified, a scuttling, scratching noise from deep within the walls, as if something unseen was desperately trying to claw its way out. It felt intimate, almost personal, like it had been waiting for them. Every instinct shouted at her to flee, but the sheer weight of the crypt seemed to pin her in place. The coffins trembled violently now, shaking with a life of their own, their wood creaking and moaning as though the dead within stirred at last. A heavy air of anticipation filled the mausoleum, thick enough to suffocate. Mom, what's happening? The child whispered, wide eyes searching Sarah's face for reassurance that was slipping further away by the second. Stay in the light, Sarah whispered, her voice barely a thread. She felt an icy tendril of panic creeping up, weaving its way through her thoughts, tightening around her throat. With a horrifying crack, a coffin burst open, the lid splintering and falling like a tombstone in a graveyard. A dark, slick shape slithered out, indistinct yet terrifying. Sarah's blood ran cold as it paused, almost as if realizing it had viewers, before starting to rise. "Mom!" Her daughter screamed, panic bubbling over. "Run!" Sarah shouted, yanking her child toward the far wall, where the light still bathed them in weak safety. But the shadows knew their game, spilling forward like a heavy fog, swallowing her precious haven. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the darkness. It stood tall, looming, etching its form against the flickering light, a face that twisted in sadness and rage, an echo of the lives lost to the depths of despair. The air went still, every breath feeling like a crime, every heartbeat a countdown. "Who dares disturb our rest?" A low growl reverberated, shaking the walls, sending tremors through Sarah's bones. "Please!" She fell to her knees, her fear raw, no longer the protector, merely the desperate. "We meant no harm." The figure laughed, a sound that seemed to drag from the bottom of a cursed pit. It advanced slowly, shadows billowing like mist. Sarah could see now faces of the damned twisted within its form, mournful eyes striking discord between fear and longing. "Your fear strengthens us," it hissed, drawing closer. "You are bound to us now. You cannot escape your fate." Everything inside Sarah screamed to run, to fight, to pare down the accursed fate wrapped tightly around them. But before she could react, the lantern flickered violently, the light shrinking to a pinprick. In an instant, darkness flooded in, swallowing them whole. All sense of direction was lost, it felt as if they were falling through an endless void, panic wrapping around them like vines. When the darkness lifted, they found themselves in a different space, surrounded by towering shadows, still echoing with anguished cries, not just the cries of the dead, but the whispers of many souls lost to despair. "Mom! I don't want to be here." Her daughter cried, tears of fright streaming down her cheeks. "It's okay," Sarah whispered, though dread crowned her thoughts. They were not safe, they had merely changed prisons. As the lingering echoes from the crypt called out to them, an unexpected glimmer caught her eye, a tiny, forgotten key nestled in the dust. Did it offer hope, or was it another trick? What could it unlock? The sense of impending doom echoed, trapping her in uncertainty as shadows danced around the key, drawing closer. Every nerve pulsed with fear, urging her to make a choice. What lay behind those imaginary bars? What if the key unlocked even worse horrors? As she reached for it, the chilling question clawed at her insides: would this decision save them or doom them? The question loomed large. As the proximity of the shadows intensified, Sarah felt the weight of desperation laced into every breath. The flickering glow from the tiny key danced in front of her, tempting her dangerously close to its pull. But the darkness writhed around her, whispering tales of failure and hopelessness, overshadowing the slivers of hope that came with the thought of escape. As the figures from the coffin transformed into grotesque silhouettes, she glanced at her daughter, whose eyes mirrored her own, filled with fear yet shining with the faint glimmer of determination. "Mom, we have to do something." The child whimpered, gripping her mother's arm as if it might anchor them both in the face of encroaching dread. "I know. I want to let them take us," Sarah insisted, clenching her fists around the key. It felt like cold steel against her skin, pulsing with an energy she couldn't explain. Suddenly, inspiration struck. The key might not only unlock a door, but a path to unraveling the curse that had trapped them in this realm of sorrow. Taking a deep breath, she inhaled the scent of the dust-laden air. The mausoleum, what if it's still anchored to this place? She said, recalling the vision of the casket, the shape that had tantalized her mind with false promises. With determination swelling her chest, Sarah turned and began walking, feet heavy against the ground yet moving with urgency. The shadows shrieked and spiraled, recoiling as her footsteps echoed through the void. The key felt warmer as they progressed, almost alive in her palm as it simmered with the potential to unlock hidden truths. "Where are we going?" her daughter asked, confusion deepening in her voice, but Sarah didn't answer. The mausoleum had to be their goal. Its presence loomed, woven in the fabric of old tales and painful memories, poised as both their prison and their salvation. Just then, the shadows surged forward, more powerful and desperate than before, clawing at them as if the life force of their existence depended on dragging them back into despair. Sarah pressed forward, heart pounding, feeling the weight of the past creeping beneath her skin. "Stick close. We're almost there," she yelled defiantly, deliberately raising the key high, igniting a spark of hope in her daughter. When they reached the mausoleum, the entrance felt alive with malevolence. The darkness billowed at the threshold, seething like a storm. With shaking hands, Sarah thrust the key into a lock hidden in the bricks. She could almost hear the walls groan under the pressure of its impending unveiling. Twisting the key, a shudder echoed through the air, and the darkness pulsed, swirling around them in breathtaking anticipation. The door swung open with a creak, revealing a space thick with ethereal light. Her heart raced. Had they found the truth within? Fear mingled with hope as she ushered her daughter inside. They stepped into the inner sanctum where spectators of lost lives stood silent, wreathed in mist. The haunting faces she recognized mingled with the shadows, reflective of the living yet ethereal. In the center lay a lone figure. "Your sacrifice," the figure intoned, its voice like honey dipped in sorrow. "You must choose." It was a familiar face, her husband's, but twisted in torment, begging for release. The sight set off icy fingers along Sarah's spine as emotions surged. Waves of grief wrestled within her against the suffocating shadows lurking just outside the mausoleum. "No!" she shouted, shaking her head violently. "I won't succumb to your lies. You will not take us." But the shadows spoke with synchronicity, their chorus cascading around her, nearly drowning out her defiance. "Join us, Sarah. Free yourself. Free them. Embrace an endless night." "No." Her voice echoed in desperation, resonating against the stones of the mausoleum. Memories flooded her senses, the laughter, warmth, a future that felt just within reach. "I will not." Then, without hesitation, she brandished the key in front of the specter. The moment it touched the light, the mausoleum erupted into blinding luminosity, cracking the oppressive darkness surrounding them. As the shades recoiled, a high keening rose from the depths of the shadows, caught in a swirling vortex of ancient regret. The faces of the lost twisted in anguish, caught between the desire for peace and the instinct to cling to the living. With a cry fueled by love, Sarah spun her daughter toward the fleeing light. "Run!" she bellowed, clinging tightly to her hand. Together, they burst out of the mausoleum, and like a wave, the darkness fell away. Ashen cries and shadowy fingers relinquished their hold, and for a moment, everything froze in time. Then, like a breath of fresh air, dawn began to break, turning the oppressive night into a palette painted with warmth. They stumbled into a clearing, shaking off loss and despair, finding themselves met with the sun's embrace. Sarah held her daughter's hand tightly, panting, the shadows dissolving under the soft hues of morning. The weight of anguish lifted from her shoulders, unveiling the bright possibility of a new beginning. "We did it!" her daughter exclaimed, her eyes wide with awe. "Together!" Sarah whispered, tears streaking down her dirt-smudged cheeks as she glanced back toward the remnants of the haunting shadows that surged behind them, fading into the distance. They would carry the memory of loss, yes. But now, they held the power of hope and resilience forged in darkness, a torch to light their way forward. It was time to reclaim their lives, free from the cursed pull of the past, and beneath the light of a new day. They stepped forward. You need to subscribe now so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and help others find this journey. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. I want to hear your thoughts. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion.